Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you the Dragon Blade Mage. This is a Dragonknight character, but before we get started, you guys know there's a disclaimer, and that disclaimer is this. This is a roleplay, casual play build. It is not meant for meta play. Now, getting into the idea behind this character and its design, I really wanted to combine the idea of magic and swordplay with a mage, and I went through a lot of iterational work trying to get this exactly right. So this build, the story behind it is basically this. They are a part of the dragon honor guard, basically, for the Dragon Knights themselves, and they're the Mage Blades. They're basically magic wielding people, but they use two-handed on both bars. So it's kind of interesting how they work, and I'll get into that. But that's pretty much the story behind them. Is they're part of the Dragon Guard. They come in different shapes and sizes, different races, different backgrounds, everything. Any race can play this. Dark Elf, unfortunately, is the best option. So, let's go ahead and get into the character. So, as you can see, we are called the Dragon Blade Mage. We are a Dragon Knight, and we are a Dark Elf with this. Now, any race can play this. Some races are going to have certain advantages over other races in different areas, but again, any race can play this. As you can see, our ability to play this as a damage dealer, we have 64 points into our stamina. I know it sounds odd because it's a magic-based character, but trust me, this works out. So, if you're going to play this as a Magicka-based character, you can take the 64 points out of stamina and put it all into Magicka if you want. It still works. But our max Magicka is coming in at 25k, 21k Magicka, 31k max Stam, and this is on a Dark Elf. On any other race, remember, things will change when it comes to your attributes. Now, if you want to play this as a tank character, which they can play, you're going to take your 64 points, you're going to shift them, put into health until you get to about 30k. Now, these play primarily off tanks and trials. In dungeons, they can play main tank. In about, I would say, 90% of the dungeons. Not all of them, 90% of them. Now, just remember, when you put into the health, your Magicka pool will always be higher than your stamina pool on this build. Now, when you want to play this character as a healer type character, you're going to take the 64 out of stamina and put everything into Magicka. You will want to equip a Resto staff for this to play it effectively. Now, moving on to our recovery rates. Our recovery rates are coming in at kind of a low setting, but we are a Dark Elf, so recovery is always going to be low. But we have a 928 mag recovery, 336 health recovery, a 585 stamina recovery. Our weapon damage is coming in at 2476 with a 37% weapon critical. We do have a 1958 spell critical, or spell damage with a 48% critical. Spell resist is 15,000 with a physical resist of 13,000. I already know I'm gonna get asked this, guys. It has to do with the way I set my CP, that I can get my resistances as high as I do. Alright, moving on to the Mundus Stone. We are using the Thief Mundus Stone. Here's a few suggestions. If you're gonna play this as a tank, use the Lady Mundus Stone. If you're gonna play this as a healer, use the mages, or use the Atronach Mundus Stone for the higher mag recovery. Moving on, we do have Major Prophecy because we have Inner Light on both bars, and we do use Tri-Stat Food because we are a kind of a hybrid type build. So this is where things get interesting. Moving on to the equipment, when we're playing a tank, you're going to use tripods. When you're playing a support character or healer, you will use spell power pots, and when you're playing a damage dealer, you will be using the stamina power pots to increase your stamina recovery by a little bit to help you maintain your stamina return. Excuse me, guys, allergies. Alright, and we do use tri-stat food primarily because we are more of a hybrid build. If you wanted to play this character using Witch Mother's Potent Brew, it would be better to go with dual fire stabs. Alright, now, moving on to the sets. Starting with our monster set, a lot of people should have guessed this. I am using Grothar's. This is the Grothar's set. Both pieces are in light. And I am using this set because the one piece increases our max magicka pool. Our two piece, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create a lava pool around you that swirls, dealing X amount of flame damage to all enemies within 8 meters of you every second for 5 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. It's pretty much going off non-stop. Because you are an up-close mage, you fight up front, you kind of need that capability to do that, so that's where you get that from. Now this is well fitted with a tri-stat enchant. Now the reason we're using well fitted is to reduce our cost in dodge roll and sprinting. This saves us a ton in resources, especially when you add it to the other advantages we have. Now moving on to the shoulders. The shoulders are light, max magicka, divines. That's to basically maximize our magicka pool, and then to increase our Mundus Stone capability. Now moving on to the chest, we are using a reinforced crafted Hunting's Rage chest. Now Hunting's Rage is a really interesting set for a damage dealer in the physical sense, because it gives you weapon critical, max stamina, weapon critical, and weapon damage. This allows you to maximize your physical damage aspects of your character while still being focused on the magicka side. We do use tri-stat here and reinforce. The reinforce is to maximize this piece of armor's resistance level. Heavy armor works best with reinforced when it's on the chest and the legs and the helm. If it's the belt, boots, gloves, or shoulders, it's better to go Nirnhoned. And only on the belt and gloves, it's better to go reinforced still on the gloves and shoulders, or the boots and shoulders, because they do have a higher resistance value. And that's only if you're using heavy armor. Now moving on to the smaller pieces, and I'm going to go through these ones a little bit quicker. So the smaller pieces, we are using divines, as you can see. We do have a max magicka on the belt. It is light. The boots are light with a max stamina divines. The gloves are light with a max stamina divines. If you see here, all of our pieces, these top 5, or these smaller pieces, including the helm, are all light pieces with divines except for the helm. And we have split our resources here between stamina and magicka on the smaller pieces so we could hybridize better. And you can use a destruction staff back bar if you want to. Now, moving on to the leggings, they are well fitted, tri-stat enchant medium legs. Now this is for crafted light armor builds. If you have a crafted set, if you're using Julianus, you're using any of that stuff, always go medium legs, heavy chest, everything else light. The reason for this is you're going to get more out of your resistances this way than any other way. And the reason for the tri-stats is so we can hybridize the character. Alright, moving on now to the jewelry. This is the next set we use, and this is called Silks of the Sun. Now, the reason I chose Silks of the Sun is 1, it gives you max health, 2, it gives you max magicka, 3, it adds spell damage, and it adds 400 spell damage on the 5-piece to your flame damage abilities. Most of the abilities you do are flame damage source. So this is how you maximize your damage with that spell damage capability. So, on anything flame. So we use a lot of flame damage abilities to maximize our damage output. And as you can see here, we do use a tri-rune ring with a weapon damage and a tri-rune ring with another weapon damage. The reason why we're using so much weapon damage is we get so much spell damage from this other set piece that we don't need extra spell damage. We need the weapon damage to apply to this set as well, so we get that higher physical damage output. Now onto the necklace, we are using a Bloodthirsty with a mag recovery. The reason for the Bloodthirsty, we are a damage dealer primarily. Being primary damage dealer, you want to focus on maximizing your damage potential, and this is how you can do that, using a Bloodthirsty jewelry piece. Now, like I said, this thing can play a tank and healer and all that. Its primary role is damage, though. Alright, moving on to the weapons. Starting with the front bar, we are using a Nirnhoned Greatsword of the Sun with a fire damage enchant. This is because we want to maximize our flame damage output. So we use a fire damage enchant here. The Nirnhoned is because we want to maximize both our weapon and spell damage on both bars. Moving on to the back bar, we are using an infused weapon damage enchant with an infused trait. The infused trait enhances your enchantment by 30%, the effect of it, and it also reduces its cooldown. So this thing you're going to keep applied really well. And as you can see, it gives you 452 extra weapon and spell damage. Your spell damage is over 3k. Your weapon damage is going to be over 4k when it's all maxed out. So you have a really good amount of weapon damage with spell damage. Alright. Now that I've shown you the gear, we're going to go over the skills. Starting with class skills. And this is just a suggestion on the class skills. When it comes to your class skills, you don't have to do this, but I suggest it. Learn all of your class skills, active abilities, ultimates, and passives, so you can take advantage of any role necessary within your desired playstyle. So you can play your character how you want, when you want. Alright, moving on now to our weapon skills. We are using primarily two-handed. Like I said, you can use Destruction Staff, but we do learn the ultimate, the active abilities, and the passives here. The same thing if you were going to learn Destruction Staff. You'd want to learn the passives, the active abilities, and the ultimate, because you never know what situation you're going to be playing in and when it's going to be necessary. If you are playing a healer, suggest Restoration Staff, and if you are wanting to tank a little bit more effectively, Sword and Shield is going to be a good option. You can tank with an Ice Staff as well. Moving on, light armor passives. We do take all of them because we are a light armor build, so we take advantage of all the light armor passives so we can maximize our character's capabilities in that playstyle. Medium armor, we take the top two and the bottom one, and we are taking advantage of all these because the top one's going to increase your weapon crit. This one's going to reduce or increase your stamina recovery and reduce your stamina costs. And then this one is going to increase your movement speed while sprinting by 3%, and then also reduce the dodge roll cost by 4%. With the way we have this set up, we actually have a baseline of 20% reduced dodge roll cost because of this one piece in our CP, but we also get another 10% from our armor. So we actually get a 30% reduced dodge roll cost, which is really nice. It's almost equal to that of a medium armor player. Now moving on to heavy armor, we do use the top three of this as well because we want to be effective with the one piece of heavy we wear, the one piece of light or the one piece of medium, and then all the light pieces. Moving on to world skills, you can be a vampire with this if you are a dark elf. If you are not a dark elf, don't be a vampire with this because you die really easily. But dark elf can play a vampire really well. You can play a vampire with this with any race, but you just got to play careful. Otherwise, you can die really easy. Soul Assault, Consuming Trap, Shatter Soul, Soul Summon, Soul Lock. Those are the choices I make here. I always get Soul Summons and Soul Lock, though. Some of these other ones are optional. Fighters Guild, we do learn all the ultimates, active abilities, and passives here as well, because we want to take advantage of all the tools we can use on our character. Same thing with the Mages Guild and Psijic Order. We take the ultimate, active abilities, and passives on all of these. Now, Undaunted is a different story. You always want to take at least a majority of these. And here's why. You never know what role you're going to be playing. If you need to be a tank, you need Inner Rage, okay, or the Inner Fire and its morphs. The reason why, so you can taunt stuff without Sword and Shield, or without Ice Staff. You also need a damage shield. Sometimes it's better to use a stamina-based damage shield over a magicka-based, because that way you're not burning through resources as quickly on one thing or the other. And then I always like to get the Mystic Orbs to offer group support no matter what I'm playing. When it comes to the two passives, these are also very important to get when you can get them. Assault skills, I take the ultimate and active abilities that best represent me in PvE. Same thing with the support side, active, ultimate, and passive here, because this one passive does work in PvE. When it comes to racials, Dark Elf is our race of choice here. Now, like I said, any race will work. They will just have different stat variables that you got to work around. And in some cases, some races might be better in the Magicka side, like the High Elf, the Breton, the Argonian, and the Khajiit, and the Dark Elf. Where in the stamina side, you've got the Nords, the Orcs, the Imperials, the High Elf, the Red Guard. You guys get the drift here. So you got a lot of different variations in how this character is going to work based on the different racial choices. Some are going to have higher pools than others. Alright, the reason for Dark Elf, though, they do get Dynamics, which increases max magic and stamina by 1875. They do get the Resist Flame, which kind of fits the whole Flame Mage kind of thing. And then the Ruination increases weapon and spell damage by 258. Going on to crafting skills, Alchemy, medicinal use. When you're using a potion, resulting effects last 30% longer. And Provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur. Both of these make your food and drinks consumed last 20 minutes longer in duration. This just makes your food last longer. Now, before I go over the skills, I'm going to tell you guys, I thoroughly tested every single one of these builds, like inside and out. It's not like last week where I had issues. This week I actually went in, I tested every build, parsing, took them into dungeons, I did all kinds of stuff with them to make sure that they worked really effectively. So, starting with our first ability, on our bar, we use Molten Whip. Now, the reason I chose Molten Whip is because it really fits well into this. First off, it does X amount of flame damage up front, and then if you hit an enemy that is immobile, stunned, or off-balanced, you get, I forget what it is. Oh, you do a special attack. While slotted, whenever you activate a different Ardent Flame ability, you gain a stack of Searing Fury, or Seething Fury, which increases the damage of your next Molten Whip by 33%, and your weapon and spell damage by 125 for 5 seconds. This can stack 3 times. We are going to use this a lot, and you guys will see why. See, when we activate this the first time, we get a little bit of Seething Fury, which means the next time we activate our Molten Whip, which we will, it's going to hit for more damage. So what we do is we activate this ability on our rotation, light attack, do our Wrecking Blow light attack, Burning Embers light attack, Flames of Oblivion light attack, and then go back to Molten Whip. And we do this one more time, and then we do Wrecking Blow twice, and then we swap bars. I'll show you guys the rotation. The next ability we use is Wrecking Blow, and this is because this thing just hits for an absurd amount of damage. It also grants you Empower on your next light attack. So whenever you do this, you want a light attack like right afterwards, so you can get that extra 40% damage in your light attacks right away. Next ability we have is called Burning Embers. This one does X amount of flame damage up front, X amount of flame damage over 10 seconds, and it heals you for 82% of the total damage inflicted when the effect ends. Now, the next ability we use is called Flames of Oblivion. Now, this one scales off your highest offensive stats, so in this case, it is going to be our stamina side. So this one will fire fireballs at 2 enemies every 5 seconds, dealing X amount of damage. While slotted, you gain major proficiency and major savagery, increasing both weapon and spell critical by 2191. And then, of course, it scales with your highest offensive stat. The next ability we have is Inner Light. We have this here to boost our max magicka pool because we are primarily spellcaster to a higher pool. So we get 5% here, 2% for each mage skilled ability slotted from our mage passives. So we actually get 7% increase in max magicka. We also get Major Prophecy at all times, which we have on both bars. Now moving on to the last ability we have, and this is a kind of a floater ability, but this is the one I prefer to have here, and that is Flawless Dawnbreaker. And this does damage up front and damage over 6 seconds. But while slotted, your weapon damage is increased by 5%. It's really good on the front bar to have this because of Wrecking Blow itself. Wrecking Blow is going to get more damage output because of this. Now, moving on to the back bar, we have our first ability, which is Carve. Now this is how we're going to primarily keep the uptime of our weapon and spell damage enchant. Now as you can see, it does X amount of damage up front, it does X amount of damage over time for 10 seconds. So we can get 3 ticks of our weapon damage, or weapon and spell damage enchant. Now, this thing does hit in a cone in front of it. I want to show you guys this. When you attack with this ability, you see that big arcing wave that it does? That whole area is where you hit, and anything hit there will be hit by this damage. So it is a trash clearing thing, and it's a really great ability because it does do damage over time. The next ability we use is another damage over time ability, which is called Engulfing Flames. Exhale a flaming blast to enemies in front of you, dealing X amount of damage up front, X amount of damage over 10 seconds. Affected enemies take 10% more damage from all fire damage attacks. This is where this thing gets powerful. The next ability we have is called Eruption. Now this is a ability you're going to be using quite a bit, but basically this one reduces enemy movement speed by 70%, it does flame damage every second, and it deals flame damage immediately on activation, and it lasts 18 seconds. So it's a very long-lasting ability. The other ability, the next ability we have is we have the wrong one there because I was testing, like I said, in different environments, different situations. The next ability we're going to have on our bar is Igneous Weapons. Now the reason we're using Igneous Weapons is charge you and your allies with volcanic power and gain major sorcery and major brutality, increasing spell and weapon damage by 20% for 42 seconds. Now when you activate either one of these, you will do what's called Mountain's Blessing, which will also give minor brutality to you and your allies. And if you are in combat, you also generate 3 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. So every time you swap bars, you will be activating Eruption. So every time you activate Eruption, you will be getting 3 ultimate, plus you're going to be reapplying minor brutality. You'll be activating this every 42 seconds. So you'll have major brutality, minor brutality, and major sorcery all the time. Next up, we have Inner Light, again for the Major Prophecy and the 5% max magicka, plus the spell critical rating. Hush. Sorry guys for that little interruption. And then the last ability we have is a very powerful ultimate that we use mainly, and that is Standard of Might. Now this does an 8-meter radius, and I'm sorry about this guys, I had it fixed, but it's come back to haunt me. It's not a virus, it's not a bug, don't worry, it's safe. It's just my computer's getting warm, and it'll flip in and out from the video card because to try and cool off the card. So we have this here because of what it does. It has an 8-meter radius and it lasts for 18 seconds. You call down a standard standard that hits the ground, dealing X amount of damage every second for 18 seconds to enemies and applying major defile to them, reducing their healing received and health recovered by 30%. Standing in the area increases your damage done and reduces your damage taken by 15%. All allies near the standard can activate the Shackle Synergy, which deals X amount of flame damage to the enemies and immobilizing them for 5 seconds. That's if they can be immobilized. I use this all the time. This thing is super powerful with this character type. Alright, so now that I've shown you the skills, we are going to go over the CP really quick, starting with the red tree. We have 56 in Ironclad, reducing your damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 38 into Light Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 3250 while wearing 5 or more pieces of light armor. This is how we maximize our resistance pools to give us greater survivability, and we don't have to put as much into Elemental Defender, Hardy, and Thick Skin and all that. We can actually get more out of this higher physical and spell resist than we can out of those. I know it's crazy. Moving on, we have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 in the Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. 43 in the Elemental Defender, reducing damage from flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then 40 in the Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. This is all damage shields applied to you. That's even if you're not a tank, Dragon Knight giving out shields, or healer giving out shields. Any shield that is applied to you from any source is affected by this. So even if they have this as well, the player has this applied as well for themselves, you're going to get the same amount of shield strength as that other person, depending on the shield type. Next up, Quick Recovery, 19. We put 90 points in here. This increases our healing received by 5%. This just helps us stay alive a little better from heals. Now, moving on over here, we have 40 in a Warlord. This reduces break free cost by 16%. We have 16 in a Sprinter, reducing sprint cost by 10%. 16 in a Bashing Focus, reducing bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 in a Mooncap, increasing your stam recovery by 10%. And 75 in Arcanus, increasing your mag recovery by 14%. Now, I know I'm going to get asked this. Why didn't you put anything to Tenacity? We are in light armor. Tenacity, we would only get like a 40% return on our heavy attacks. We still get 30%. 10% more really doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't. We really want to maximize our recovery rates, because that's how we play off of our resource management with this build. 40 into Tumbling, reducing dodge roll cost by 16%. Remember what I was talking about with the medium armor piece? Gives us 4%. That's 20%. Plus the two other pieces is 30% dodge roll. It's really nice. Then we have 40 into Shadow Word, reducing our block cost by 16%. This saves, all these things save you stamina resources so much. It's ridiculous. Moving on to the blue tree. We are hybridized here, people. So we have 43 in a Blessed, increasing our healing done by 10%. 23 in the Elfborn, increasing critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. We have 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. That's because we are primarily that type of character that uses two great swords. So we do 35 points in here, increase our light and heavy attack damage with two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, dual-wield bows, and werewolf form by 20%. We have 40 in the Mastered Arms. This increases your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. This includes fire, any physical, magic, it doesn't matter. On top of that, we also unlock Butcher, which increases our light and heavy attack damage done by 5% when enemies are below 25% health. And then, of course, Reposit and Retaliation. Moving on, we get 43 into Mighty. This increases physical, poison, disease damage done by 35%. 23 into Precise Strikes, increasing our critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And 20 into Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. Now, that doesn't look like much, and I know a lot of people are gonna question the damage of this. Now, I will say this. If you want to put minor force on the back bar here, your best bet is to remove Flames of Oblivion off the front bar, put this on the front bar, and then put Trap Beast on the back bar with the Carve. You want Carve here all the time. This can be swapped to the front bar, and if you have Trap Beast, you will do a little bit more damage, but let me just show you what this thing can do without Trap Beast. Oops, I screwed that one up. So we did about 18k. I can usually get about 22 to 24k damage with this guy, or with this character against that enemy, because of how, if you can get the rotation effective, really effective. I mean, 22 to 23k isn't bad, especially for being somebody who's an upfront warrior type that uses magic and stamina together. Now we're going to parse on this guy. Now this is what it would look like if you were in an organized group, and I was actually using the wrong potion, you guys. So we will go ahead and just stick with the tripod for this. But I should have been using the warrior power pots on that to get our stam recovery and worry about that more. But we'll go ahead and do this. So we are going to do the whole process again. We are going to buff up. Oops. Buff up. Really? Buff up. Use our potions. And just do the same process here. Oops, I didn't finish the other side. But usually I can get about 35 to 40k with this. So, and that's not too bad. That's doing pretty much a perfect rotation almost right there where I was at. So, and as you can see, this thing's pretty self-sustainable, even using a tri-stat pod. Now, if I was using Trapeze, I could easily break 40k with this character on damage. So let me go ahead and show you guys this. This is what our damage, weapon damage looks like, 4,893. This is on the big guy. We do have a 53% weapon critical, 60% critical damage, and you can see most of our abilities hit like trucks. Even our Molten Whip can hit for a lot. On the Magicka side, we have 27k max Magicka, 30, almost 4k spell damage. And remember, we get an extra 400 spell damage with this. We have a 54% spell critical, 60% critical damage, and a 4k spell penetration. And this is running the Thief Mundustone. So we have high spell penetration, we have no physical penetration whatsoever. And then on the smaller one, this is what it looked like weapon damage wise. We had 4k weapon damage with 47% weapon critical, 60% critical damage. And then over here we had 48% weapon critical with a 3k, almost 4k, because you've got to count in the extra 400 from the one thing that it doesn't show here for the fire damage. So this thing can actually pull a lot of DPS. And it's really, really powerful. Alright. Now, in order to play this as a solo build, I do need to make some adjustments here. And what we are going to do is we're going to grab our Igneous Shields, and we are going to go on the back bar. And instead of having Igneous, or the Igneous Weapons, we are going to grab our Hardened Armor. And then we don't really need a heal, per se, but I do want to make sure that I have one, so I'm going to grab that. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump over to the Depths of Malatar dungeon. Now, if you are going to solo play with this more effectively, Vigor's a really good skill for this one, so, which I might swap to when we get to the boss encounter. But we'll see. It just depends on how effective we can make this last. And please remember, this is a solo friendly build. This is also a group dungeon friendly build, and it can be a trial friendly build for somebody entering trials for the first time. Okay, they're all dead. Potion. And we do go through a lot of magicka when we solo play, unless you're using Spike Bone Shield. And then it'll be a little bit more stamina based, but that's just because of the abilities we're using. They're some of them are very magic expensive, like Igneous Shield. Gotta take out the trash there, guys. Excuse me, guys. Again, like I said, I didn't mean to, like, hawk a loogie phlegm out in your ears. It's just, my allergies have been hell on me this week. And it has to do with the fact I live in a very dry heat environment. Here in Arizona, it's very dry heat. It's not humid. It's just gross. Yeah, see, I should have used the other thing here, not the deep breath. I'm gonna die, but that's okay. I should have used vigor. I should have changed deep breath for vigor, but I didn't. Oh well. But that's pretty much the build, guys. That is the Dragon Blade Mage, and I had somebody ask me, are you going to be releasing any damage dealers that use both physical and magicka? The first one is, and it is probably one of my favorite builds that I've made to date when it comes to a mage type. I'm not a big mage fan, magic player fan, because I don't like being in the background. I like to be up close and personal. This allows me to play a mage up close and personal, and I really like it because of that. So, but that's pretty much it for the Dragon Blade Mage. I hope you guys like it. If you do, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.